Path of Exile. Seems fun. Let's try it. Nice, I killed the boss. A skill point? Alright. What the f? Yes. The classic Path of Exile skill tree. Very overwhelming for our good old first-timers playing the game. But what if I told you that it's not that hard to understand? Here, come here. Monkey explanation time. Imagine that this crazy amount of overwhelming nodes and passives can be cut down to 3 main attributes: intelligence, strength, and dexterity. For most gamers, these terms already make sense. For those who are new to gaming completely, well, intelligence is mainly mana and spells like a mage class, like a wizard, right? Dexterity is faster, more evasive, a bow, shooting here and there, dodging attacks. Strength is stronger, slower and tankier, more health and heavy hitting. Makes logical sense, right? Now let's add 3 more attributes. The hybrids, as I like to call them. They're just a mix of the 2 neighboring attributes. So, dexterity and intelligence, intelligence and strength, strength and dexterity. Now the same logic as before applies to this too. And that's how I just explained all of the main ascendancy classes. Now the main question, what class is for you? See, now depending on what class you choose, you will start out in a different part of the tree. See these little circles? I'll highlight them for you so it's easier to see. These are starting circles. That's easy to explain. Basically, each character class starts at a different circle. Here is the Shadow.
Is it possible to murder someone who's already dead?
As you maybe remember, this is a part of the Dex Int hybrid. Why is it a Dexterity Int hybrid? As you can even see here, we start off with Dexterity and Intelligence right near the start of our Shadow. Now, as you can see, it's very green down here towards the Dexterity area, it's very blue here towards the Intelligence area, and it's very red here towards the Strength area, because those are the 3 main colors that we can use. Now, as a brief explanation, you can kind of realize how many Intelligence nodes there are up here and how many Dexterity nodes are down here. And as I mentioned, Intelligence is usually considered something towards critical strike, towards mana, towards spell damage, all of those things. And if you actually look here, you can see critical strike multiplier with daggers. See, it's not a wand, it's a dagger. Dagger is faster attacking. Like I mentioned, dexterity is more evasive and stuff like that. But also right next to it, you have mines. I'll talk about that later. And then we also have mana, which is right here. But also we can have other things, like critical strike with daggers again, and maybe increased attack speed with daggers. So you could already start a quite interesting dagger build if you took these 3 nodes already, which are quite close to each other. As well as in every start, there's also going to be nodes that increase our damage, dexterity, intelligence, and our life. Never forget, life is also very important on your character. The higher we go, the more intelligence nodes we will get from here. The lower we go down here, the more dexterity nodes we'll start getting. Dexterity also is going to be like increased suppressed spell damage and movement speed, or maybe some more accuracy rating and attack speed. This all depends on what you want towards your character. With the Shadow class, we have a lot to choose from. Let's go to ascendancies to tell you a little bit more. The Shadow has 3 main ascendancies: the Saboteur, the Trickster, and the Assassin. Let's start talking about the Assassin really quickly. Once you start going into the game, you will have to complete something called lab trials. While you progress through the acts, you will also see that these ascendancies will pop up where you need them. Once you start progressing through the game, you'll start to realize that you actually need to do this. So the quest line towards the ascendancy classes is actually quite useful, and you will learn it quite quickly. When we think of an assassin, what do we really think of? That one-shot, good hard-hitting, low life but really good damage type class, right? Now, as you can see here, you can change power charge nodes on critical strike. So that means, what does a power charge do? It increases your critical strike chance as well. Let's see here, critical strike multiplier and chance. How about this one? More critical strike. Maybe this one? Critical strike. How about this one? Poison critical strike. Interesting. How about this? Elusive effect. And you take no extra damage from critical strikes when elusive. That's really cool. It's an extra defense mechanism. But see how all of these small nodes is going to be critical strike chance? Almost everywhere. And multiplier. And here we have the Saboteur. Saboteur, as you can see, has increased trap throwing speed, maybe some area of effect, mine throwing speed. So it depends if you want to go for traps or if you want to go for mines. All of these are going to be scaled really nicely with our Ascendancy class. Now let's talk about Ranger.
Life is nothing without death. That simple truth's been forgotten from time to time.
See, Ranger usually is a class that we kind of associate with bows. Bows are really good and a really strong weapon, and especially really good for a meta build called Tornado Shot. You can find out more and much more information on YouTube. It's a great source of more additional information. But as you can see here, we have projectiles, right? An arrow is probably a projectile, right? Then we have bows. Critical strike chance with bows. Additional arrow. Also, we have additional defense mechanisms, such as evasion rating and maximum life and spell suppression. These things scale really nicely with this class. But don't think that you are very restricted towards only this side of the tree. If you really want to, there is no real problem of not getting a node that goes all the way here. For example, you don't have to restrict yourself only to the dexterity nodes. Nobody is telling you that you can't get any strength nodes from down here. Maybe if you want to have some tanky character that heavy hits with an axe, you can do that in this game. You're never restricted towards only one thing. What we also need to consider is the effectiveness. If we want to get, for example, a node that's all the way here that might be useful, let's say that we want to take this node, right? Because it increases our physical damage and two-handed melee weapons. Let's say that you have a nice big heavy hitting axe and you have a build that you want to do, especially somehow, for some reason, on the Ranger. Well, you can do that. But consider this, you have a lot of skill points that you need to use in order to get all the way over here. Is that going to be effective? Or could you use these skill points towards something that is closer over here? So it's all up to you, and this is the beauty of Path of Exile. Nothing is limited. Now, when I was talking about the bow, these are the Ranger's ascendancies. As I was talking before, here is, for example, the Deadeye. Deadeye scales really nicely with the bow. As you can see here, we have a lot of projectile damage, projectile speed as the minor nodes, and then the bigger ones have additional projectiles. We have some additional things like movement speed and critical strikes as well, far shot. So many different things that you can start learning while playing the game. Test. Try to see what is fun for you. We also have the Raider, for example. The Raider is also really cool, and it scales with Onslaught, it scales with Elemental Ailments, suppress damage for defense, evasion and movement speed, frenzy charges as well. Now what I said sounds really difficult and advanced, but these are things that you're going to be learning while playing the game. And there's no shame in trying to search something up on the PoE wiki page, which is an incredible source of information that will definitely help you out on the way of your journey towards the end game. Let's talk about Pathfinder as well. Pathfinder is quite an interesting ascendancy because it scales something like flasks. You know how you have a life flask and you have to click it in order to regenerate life? Well, this actually kind of scales that, but it also has flask effect and charges. There's so many different things that you can see over here that is going to scale with flasks. Pathfinder is quite an interesting ascendancy and I really love her. Now, let me do this. How about I'll give you a little bit of homework? If you want to find out more information, try to search out the Witch, the Templar, the Martyr, and the Duelist. Those are 4 more ascendancy classes that you can find out more information quite easily on the PoE wiki page. I don't want to go too in-depth because this isn't an in-depth guide. This is just supposed to help you try to find out what first character would you actually like to play with, or if you want to learn more about other characters and what they actually can do. So as you can see, depending on which class we choose, we can scale different things. With strength, like I said, which is associated a lot with life, hard-hitting damage, stuff like that, you can see here that we have a lot of physical damage, double damage, regen life, armor. These are all things that are really close to our starting point, which means that it can scale much easier by using much less points. So, hard-hitting class, a lot of life and strength, you probably want to play the Martyr. Or if you want, you can play the Templar. Do you remember what this class could be? It's a hybrid. This hybrid class will scale intelligence and strength. So the Templar is quite interesting as a character, because you can be really tanky with him, but also you can have a lot of damage. There's still one more character that I didn't really talk about. It's called the Scion. The Scion is unlocked once you unlock all of the ascendancies for a single class. So this could be just your first character, and you manage to get all 4 ascendancies. Now the Scion is an interesting class. As you can see here, it's quite different and difficult. Now all of this, I'll also describe quite briefly. As you can see, we have the main attributes: dexterity, intelligence, and strength. We also have the hybrids. Now as you can see, towards the hybrids, we do have the duelist class over here, the duelist ascendancy. We can choose single ascendancies from these characters that are kind of compact, and all of these ascendancies can now be chosen here. And the same thing applies to every single other ascendancy. Basically, the Scion can be a hybrid of whatever you want. Let's say a hybrid of a hybrid. So you can actually choose dexterity and intelligence, probably with an assassin for power charges and critical strike chance, but then you can choose, for example, the berserker, so you have increased damage and maybe some rage on hit with attacks. Who knows what build you might choose and what you might do. Now one thing that I want to really briefly do: why do we scale these things, and why is the skill tree so advanced? Well, that's because we have all kinds of different skill gems. There's so many different skill gems in the game that choosing one is really difficult for us. If you want a guide that is much more in detail about skill gems and support gems, please let me know in the comments below. I'll try to make a better video about that. But in brief description, I'll tell you this. If we have, for example, dual strike, you can see up here it's critical, attack, melee, and it's a strike. Or how about we can choose an explosive trap? Remember that one ascendancy that I talked to you about Saboteur? That would probably scale really well with explosive trap, right? How about freezing pulse? It's a spell, and projectile, and cold damage. Since we're a hybrid, it's quite close to those projectile passives, right? That's near a ranger? Maybe we could scale really well with that. There's so many different things and many different ideas that you can do. Since it's a spell, and we can go to our skill tree, we can type spell. And it starts highlighting all kinds of different things that we might want to take. Increase critical strike chance for spells and critical strike multiplier for spells. How about this? Suppress spell damage. Not really what we need, but it is an extra layer of defense. But look, the more we go up here towards the intelligence, the more highlights we have. Realize that there's not many spell things towards the strength nodes, but we still have some things down here. And that's why when choosing a character, it's quite important to first try to think out of an idea. Or maybe choose a class that you already know what you want to go towards. When starting off your character, finding a specific skill that you would like to scale is quite important, because it's going to be your main source of damage. And it all starts with your first skill point.